Ooh, I'm a pilgrim and a stranger, traveling through this old bad land. I got a home, you're not the city, Lord. I will do, oh Lord, the best I can. I'm a pilgrim, nothing but a stranger. Every day I'm traveling, this old bad land. Yeah, got a home, you're not the city, Lord. I'll do, oh Lord, the best I can. I've been tempted, Lord, I've been.
Well, welcome everybody back to Presbycast. It's Resby, it's Chortles, it's, I don't know, we don't really do seasons. We've never really done, volumes or anthologies, but if you go way back into the deeper bowels of the Presbycast history,
a well-chosen word.
yes, indeed, you will find these two gentlemen who are our guests tonight, firmly lodged in the story.
Impacted, you might even say.
Dare I say impacted. They are the kidney stones. They are blood clots. They are an absolute infarction, and yet they could not be more integral to the incredible financial success of this program. So without further ado, we have Chris Drew and Dr. Daryl Hart joining the show yet again to raise the standards with their rhetoric that can only be described as two-ply.
Well,
Strong and ultra strong.
Yeah, we were going to do an hour and a half on the OPC General Assembly, but the American Medical Association advised that might be fatal to some, so we backed off on that plan. And we're going to talk about the OPC General Assembly, but we're quite unnoticed, and this sort of tells you how critical all this stuff is to me and Resby at this point in our lives.
Well, before we should preface that there is nothing more relaxing than humility. So
that's right.
We're firmly relaxed.
So about 2 weeks ago, we passed 10 years, and we're at about 650-ish shows. We deleted a few, we've doubled up a few, so that's quite a bit. More than a show a week for the past 50. We're at 50. 10 years and 2 weeks. So that's not bad.
It's taken me this long to finish counting all the Patreon donations. I guess I'll just have to start again.
Oh, yeah. Well, the accountants are working on that. I listen to fewer podcasts than I ever have, although I'd never really listened to a podcast on a podcast app until we started our podcast. I listened to Reform Forum, but I was dragging and dropping onto, iPod Touch or Shuffle or something like that. But, yeah.
Those were better days.
Resby made me do it. And history will judge if it doesn't forget completely whether it was a good idea. So yeah, it just it hit me today. We got our most prolific guest in Dr. Daryl Hart, and we've got the guy who was we did a show. We'll talk about this called Tiny Church Nation 9 years ago, and it was formative. It sort of set our course as a podcast for what it was worth. And here we are the week before. I hope my two, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to unmute you, Daryl, and Chris can unmute himself. Please note that we've done very few PCA shows this year, and the week before the PCA General Assembly, we're doing an OPC show. So that's worth something, right?
As it should be. I can't believe it's been 9 years since we did that episode. That seems... it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, well, in fact, I think, let's see, which one do I have on the screen? Here we go. I can prove it. Let me share the screen. This is an informal show tonight.
Yeah,
June 30th, almost to the day, 2017. So yeah,
Wow.
Tiny Church Nation, and that sort of set us on our course because it had everything. It had NAPARC, small churches, ordinary means of grace. We had Justice for Machen with you, decamping the PCUSA for the barren lands of the very state, where Machen died in 1937. So there we go. 80 years later, there you were.
You were also ahead of the curve. I mean, this was a kind of early version of Christian nationalism. You got
Yes.
Nation right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we've been consistent. In fact, I could. I'll talk about our first couple of shows with you, Daryl, and we were talking about these things back then. So we just suffered from being ahead, I guess, but we haven't changed much, and I don't think you guys have either. So let's say that the OPC General Assembly was a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah, already.
And I know Chris was there because I saw his beard on publicity photos from the Only Pure Church. And Dr. Daryl, your pastor was the moderator, and his beard puts Chris Drew's beard to rank shame. And it's the only way you can. We should have invited him on, right, as the moderator. But those moderators get insufferable, and probably need to be taken down a notch or two. If experience tells me anything, that's probably the case. So, anything you guys want to say before we get started? We'll dip in. Maybe we'll come back around to old Presbycast nostalgia.
Well, we could
toward
say
the
that
end.
the moderator, we didn't name him, Everett Hennis, pastor at Hillsdale OPC. And it was curious because he's on one of the standing committees.
He's on the Judicial Appeals and Complaints.
Right. Which meant that he needed to recuse himself during most of the day on Saturday and Monday because he couldn't moderate cases that were before the assembly. So he actually got kind of a light load, and he did a very good job, but navigating those thorny debates can be difficult, and who knows how he would have done during that. I'm sure he would have done okay, but those were very close votes many times, and people may not have been pleased all the time with the moderator's performance. But so that was an odd aspect of it. But anyway.
Well,
it was actually made even more complicated than that because Everett's backup was the previous moderator, and he had to step down and recuse himself because he was representing a Presbyterian in one of the judicial cases. So another guy had to go up into the. Should we basically 3 moderators for this assembly? Is that a record, Daryl? I have no idea. That seemed unusual.
Record in my experience, but yeah. Yeah.
Well, at least twice, or maybe 3 times in the last 10, 12 years in the PCA, a more skilled kind of vice substitute assistant moderator has had to step in to kind of right the ship. That sometimes happens. I think it's happened about 3 times. So you're not alone. And of course, it wasn't reasons of competence or being overwhelmed that your guys were switching out. But that's along, the PCA General Assembly, the assembly part lasts barely 2.5 days, not even that. And you guys go for what? More than a week, right?
Yeah, we started Saturday. Yeah, we started Saturday evening.
Sunday off. Yeah, you take Sunday off. So yeah.
I'm sorry. We got there Wednesday.
Yes.
Started Wednesday evening late, and then we break early on Saturday. Nothing on Sunday, and then try to wrap everything up before Tuesday at 12 noon.
Yeah.
And I think we actually had an order of the day to move that by 5 minutes. So I think we adjourned at 12:05 or something on Tuesday.
But we did go to 11:35 p.m. Monday night.
Oh, really? Well, that's impressive.
There was just too much left to be done on some of the judicial and other matters, and so we extended the order there to try to get them done, and we did. But there was still a foot race to the end.
Yeah. So my first General Assembly, 2010. That was when the infamous strategic plan and funding plan were debated. I think it was after midnight when we got through in Nashville. I remember dropping a guy at his hotel at 2 a.m. and then driving home and going to work the next morning. And it's about a 4-hour drive home, so that tells you anything. I don't remember any of that drive, but it was a learning experience, I can tell you.
And no Buc-ee's to stop in back then on the way back.
There was no Buc-ee's at Crossville. I've decided that Buc-ee's proves total depravity because every time I go, I swear I'll never go again. And then, like a dog returning to something, I stop at the next one. But that's because
explains why.
I've been driving back and forth to Florida a lot, and they suck you in North Georgia and South Florida and North Georgia.
I mean, it's hard to argue with a place that actually puts air conditioning vents in the bathrooms, unlike every other restroom in America.
So
heat them.
The theme of the show going.
All right, so I got it. This is an informal show, and of course, too much OPC at one time again cause harm to people. Somewhere in North Florida or South Georgia, on one of my last trips down, there was a sign, handmade, of course. It said, "Trump listens to Skinnerd," which I found
everything in my power to not just say HE double hockey stick, yeah, into the hot mic.
And there's a stretch in South Georgia where there are more cops writing speeding tickets than any place in the country per square mile. That there are dozens of these Second Commandment violation billboards that are just the cheesiest semi-heretical things you've ever seen. It's American folk religion at its best or worst.
You could call them barely digestible, and that would be a way to call them corny.
Boy, they were they were not good. But tell me where the assembly was this year. In Ohio, Geneva College.
No, it was Geneva College.
Beaver Falls, PA.
The first college basketball game ever was played there.
Yeah, there's signage everywhere celebrating this fact.
And I'm guessing probably not a lot of first-round draft picks coming out of there these days.
It was an intramural game. No, seriously, it was.
Yeah,
it was.
It was. And the score was 3-0. and the sign designating this is the Beaver Falls Historical Commission or something. So it's not state, certainly not federal. But they have a historic marker outside the gymnasium. I don't think this is a gym where they played. And then inside the gymnasium, field house where we met, there's a big sign underneath the Geneva College title about the.
There was actually a basketball hoop elevated above the moderator's position with a shot clock right behind it, and I kept thinking we need to make good use of the shot clock when guys are up there talking.
But that's not
you
the
have
first
40 seconds, and then you got to shut up.
That's hardly the first time this has happened at an OPC General Assembly. And what percentage of the assemblies do you think are held on basketball courts at small colleges?
75%.
Yeah. Well, the OPC, the ARP holds theirs in a gym too. And there's actually, the cool thing is there's a balcony around it, which I think there was at this one too, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And that's kind of nice for spectators and, the food trucks or whatever you got up there.
That's actually how we used ours. We had refreshments on one of the elevated areas above the stadium or the court.
Now, for the PCA General Assembly, I keep thinking there'll be a T-shirt cannon or two or three, but that hasn't happened yet.
But one other point about sports in Beaver Falls and at Geneva, local legend has it Joe Namath is a graduate of Beaver Falls High School, and when he was a high school player, as I understand it, the local high school didn't have a field, so they used the Geneva College stadium, football field. And so he would have played his high school games, some of them there at Geneva College, but there's no marker that the winning quarterback of the third Super Bowl, I believe, played his high school games there. And I know this, particularly attentive to this, because my co-author of many books, John Meether, is a big New York Jets fan and a big Namath fan. And I mean, Western Pennsylvania has produced a ton of quarterbacks. What's his name from the 49ers? Joe
Montana?
Joe Montana.
Yeah, and then the Miami Dolphins. I can't remember his name right now either. But anyway, many professional football quarterbacks come out of that part of the state.
I would say I hadn't been to Pennsylvania in probably 20 years. The last time I'd been to Pennsylvania, I was still in the main line. I was actually in seminary, and my now wife and me, we went to Pittsburgh Theological Seminary for a gathering of, at the time, sort of conservative evangelical seminarians, which were still a thing back then, still surviving. And we went there to go to a short conference, and the keynoter was the author of The Message, Eugene Peterson. And he actually gave some very interesting talks on the book of Ephesians.
Right. And friend of Bono, the
friend of
guy.
Bono.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I was very impressed with Geneva. I thought they did a great job. The environment there is just, it's just such a beautiful place. And, plus, all that General Assembly food that you're ingesting, you need to have a way to work it off, and it's got some pretty steep inclines. So in between sessions, you could, as you're hiking up the hill to your dormitory, you would burn off some of those calories. It was very important.
Well, I was a fraternal delegate 3 years ago to the General Assembly, roomed with Chris, and this gives you an idea of the family nature and the scale of the OPC General Assembly. I remember two things. They had CPAP water for those who participate, and then they had these youths driving golf carts to ferry people around, and they drove like maniacs. It was all I could do to hang on. I don't know how they didn't kill 2 or 3 people.
There's a joke somewhere about how satchel guy that we used to see in all of the theology ads with a leather satchel. Well, we've been making those jokes for 10 years. That guy's near 50, and that's probably a CPAP machine in there. It's the only way he can get it through security at the airport now.
Well, if I recall, the drivers this year were pretty tame, and they were well utilized because of the hills. But I remember last year, I think somebody fell off and broke his arm. So there have been incidents.
Oh, really? Okay, that doesn't surprise me at all, because no insurer would cover those guys. Just think about this for a minute. The OPC has a golf cart budget.
Yes,
you have to rent those things.
We have a golf cart budget. That is true.
So the PCA does not. I'm pretty sure. Although
I remember because one of my committee assignments, I was the convener and chair of Advisory Committee 9, which handled our stated clerk and also our committee on arrangements. And that's how I learned the details of the golf cart budget and how widely disparate the pricing can be between different venues. We actually got a bargain this year on the golf carts. So kudos to our committee on arrangements for that.
We'll spend that slush fund wisely. Yeah. All right. So what was going on? This is the 90th anniversary. 90th anniversary of the founding of the OPC. Just like us, you didn't meet in 2020, and you had 2 GAs in 36. So the 90th anniversary is also would have been the 91st, but it's the 90th General Assembly too, if I'm not mistaken.
92nd.
Oh, is it 92nd? Okay,
It's
I thought.
92nd.
Okay, all right. So I'm wrong. So the 50th anniversary of the PCA turned out to be the 50th GA, which was nice because the math worked out with COVID. So that was the good part about COVID was all the math, I guess. So what was on the docket this year? It seems like you're, the social media for the OPC has gotten a lot better. I didn't see as many pictures of the big screen where the Committee of Levity was putting up self-deprecating jokes. Did they do that this year?
Yeah, and they put this is the first year that I've only been a few times. Daryl's been there a lot more than me, but this is the first year I've really seen AI put to good use with respect to photographs that are displayed in between sessions for the purposes of levity, including a wonderful graphic with our fraternal delegate from the Bible Presbyterian Church at the podium with Everett Hennis behind the moderator's podium. They both have these significant beers, and somebody used an AI generation to make a little heart with an OPC and a BPC by it, which was very quaint. I think you can actually see that somewhere on Twitter. But that was actually a very important moment because the Bible Presbyterian Church has made their application to become a member denomination in NAPARC. And this year, our assembly approved a measure to make the OPC one of the two sponsoring denominations that are required for the Bible Presbyterian Church to become part of NAPARC. So it was kind of a nice one of the nice things that was on the docket this year.
So, Daryl, we could do a little history here. The BPC split off of the OPC in the first year of its existence. So tell us a little bit about that. So this would be a reunion of sorts.
Right. Well, it goes back to the Independent Board for Presbyterian Foreign Missions and rivalries between Carl McIntyre and Machen and Westminster Seminary, and differences over eschatology and alcoholic beverages and ethnic factors played into that. Westminster Seminary had at least three Dutch Americans, and you can't reduce it to those, especially in this era of people worried about kinism and whatnot. But there were differences between the Dutch Reformed background and the American Presbyterian background, and they just played out in 1937 when the split happened. By that point, Machen was dead, but it probably still would have happened anyway.
Yeah, I think Camden mentioned, maybe it was with you on the show recently on Reform Forum, maybe it wasn't, that the BPC guys referred to the foreigners, but they liked John Murray. So the Scots weren't foreigners, but Dutchmen were. And I'm not sure one's any weirder than the other when you get right down to it, but maybe one has a better pedigree for Presbyterians, maybe. All right, so what was on the docket this year? I mean, we don't have to go through it. I saw the story from the moderator, Everett Hennis, on Scott Clark's blog, and he sort of went through everything, but we could put that on the screen if we wanted to, but you may as well just tell us what was going on.
Well, readers can also get a good overview if they go to opc.org and to our General Assembly page. There's a link to the 92nd General Assembly report, which is kind of a running report that we kept throughout the Assembly. Has some nice, unlike previous years, that is a nice set of photographs included as well, and that can give you kind of a layout as well. But if you, I can start. I mean, the General Assembly meets and we consider several items of standard business. We have the worldwide mission of the church, which is Christian education, home missions, and church extension, basically our church planting committee and our foreign missions committee. So those standing committees always usually take priority in the Assembly with their reporting in our docket. We also have other ministry committees that report, the Committee on Diaconal Ministries, Short-Term Missions, our wonderful Committee on Ministerial Care. They also give reports. The way our Assembly functions is that for each of the committees, the major committee reports and the major items of business that come before the Assembly, there is a number of temporary advisory committees that are formed to consider those committee reports and to basically dive into the details of those reports so that when they're presented to the assembly, the committee will present its report, and the advisory committee will come in. If they have any recommendations or any motions they need to make with respect to the business of the committee, they can make those from the floor, having talked with committee members and become more deeply familiar with the details of what the committee's been doing and their rationale for certain proposals. And then if there are no recommendations, those advisory committees just report they're silent. We have nothing to say. We appreciate the business of the committee. We have nothing to say, and then we move on. So for several of the committees,
that's a
there were
weird
reports
thing.
of silence.
Is that the term? The committee was silent, or there's some special way of saying it, but
right. So one of the committees
is that unique to the OPC? I don't know if anybody else does that.
I don't know if any other denomination does it, but having now actually done it in the capacity I had this year, the basic formulary, if you don't have anything to say about a committee, is you say, for example, with respect to the report of the stated clerk, the advisory committee is silent. And then
all right, well, see,
they manage whatever's right.
We don't really do silence in the PCA.
And so, but other times the committees will make recommendations or suggestions or motions that are pertinent to what the committee has recommended, and those are considered by the commissioners at the floor of the assembly, and then final decisions are made. So that's the basic structure of how business flows to the assembly. In addition to the basic committee reporting, there were 4 overtures that were presented to the General Assembly this year.
Well, that's kind of lame because we've got 91 in the PCA. So that means we're at least like 23, 23 times more active and missional and Presbyterian and Reformed based on, in pure mathematical terms.
Yeah. Just on overture count, you guys are far, far in the lead. Although I think many of us were cheering for 100, and he just didn't get there. So, maybe that's something you could work on next time. Anyhow, in addition to the business of the committee business, there were the 4 overtures. There were two judicial appeals that were presented to the assembly.
Let me jump in before you get into that, because
Sure.
I'm looking at this article, and I'll say this. And of course, I say this as someone who was a fraternal delegate from the PCA to the OPC. Nobody values or does better the fraternal aspect of Presbyterianism, the ecumenical aspect, than the OPC. They're absolutely the best. It means more to you. It's just like the SEC. It just means more to the OPC. I think Daryl can tell us why that is based on their early history. But, I had 5 minutes of remarks, and the chairman of your committee, your interchurch committee, says, no, do 10. So I had to quickly expand it, which was no problem. It probably ended up doing 11 at that. But nobody takes care of their fraternal delegates or values them more or wants to hear them more than the OPC. And Daryl, I think you could probably tell us why that is.
Well, it goes back actually to the Dutch Reformed connection. I believe one of those Westminster Seminary professors of New Testament, Ned Stonehouse, was an important leader in the OPC ecumenical endeavors in the 40s, 50s. He died in the early 60s, I believe. But the Dutch Reformed, the CRC in particular, had always maintained strong connections to other Dutch Reformed communions in Europe, South Africa, New Zealand, and elsewhere, Canada. And that carried over, carried over into the OPC. And I mean, I don't know where the CRC stands in this now. It's dropped out of NAPARC, and it's not part of the ICRC, the International Council of Reformed Churches. They're probably in other ones, more mainline or liberal ones, but that's a feature that the OPC inherited because of our connections to the Dutch Reformed, and Mark Bube, who has been the current, I don't know what his exact title is, director, poobah, whatever, has really been good at this. the other factor that has made the OPC perhaps excel is Mark had been the general secretary of the Foreign Missions Committee. And, so he was right there wearing both hats, as it were, ecumenicity and foreign missions. And there's a lot of overlap in those endeavors. And that's another way in which I think the OPC established more of that reputation.
As a new and very small denomination in the 30s, you all were very happy. I mean, you were very appreciative of help and recognition and advice. And I think probably the PCA started bigger, and they were very touched by. I think the OPC sent someone to the first PCA General Assembly, and that was much appreciated. But I think the PCA sort of lost regard for things ecumenical for a while, but there's been in the last 2, 3, 4 years, there's been a real resurgence in that. The PCA we sent 2 or 3 people to your assembly this year, right?
Including, there were 3.
The moderator, the presumptive new stated clerk, the current moderator, and someone else.
Well, Fred Greco gave fraternal greetings.
Okay.
And I don't remember who else.
Fred was there with John Bice and also Lowell Ivy, who's an OP guy now who does Metanoia Prison Ministries in the PCA.
Yeah.
So all 3 of those men were there this year.
Yeah. Well, we're doing better in that, and I'm glad about that. I was on the Interchurch Relations Committee for a couple of years, so that's a concern of mine as well. So
I think Mark Bube's title is Administrator of the CEIR.
Okay.
And so he does a lot of he does a great job, I think, with helping our committee maintain its ecumenical ties.
All right. Well, tell us about the overtures. All 4 of them, very disappointing, and then you can tell us about the discipline stuff. Well, not in great detail.
Yeah, the overtures they ran kind of the gambit this year. One of them came from my presbytery. It was the last one, and so I'll talk about it last. Daryl may or may not have something to say about that one. But the first one was requesting that the General Assembly form a study committee to study the proper biblical and confessional understanding of church-state relations and church culture relations with attention given to Christian nationalism. So that's the structure of the overture as it came up. That was reworded, and I don't have the revised wording with me in front of me now, but that at least portions of that overture were granted. The next overture had basically 2 propositions in it. It came. The first one came from the Presbytery of the Southwest. The second one came from the Presbytery of Philadelphia. It was requesting that the General Assembly join with the ARP, the RPCNA, and the PCA in their, I'll just quote from it, their commitment to condemn racism/kinism and to form a special committee to study the matters raised in the statement passed by the ARP. That overture was substantively
written by our friend Ben Glasser.
Yeah, Ben was my roommate this year at General Assembly. Both those portions, as I recall, were granted. The Assembly basically adopted, unedited, the statement that what the ARP produced, and then also created the special study committee.
And
the third overture.
And hold on, and who was one of the persons placed on that study committee? Is he in the room with us right now?
One of them may be in the room right now, as a matter of fact.
So
not that one. I'm on Christian nationalism.
The first one, yeah, the first one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Christian nationalism. Yep.
So that committee, a lot of people were screaming bloody murder online that this committee is it's stacked, and I'm thinking, I had some analogies, but it does seem like a committee that has people who have written and said a lot of things about this, and that's fine. I mean, they know about it, they care about it. I'm sorry that hurts anyone's feelings, but they're it's still a free country where you can affiliate or not affiliate, like Machen said, and Christianity and liberalism, the difference between voluntary and involuntary organizations, and the church is you don't join it by virtue anymore of being born as a citizen of a country, and no one's forced to agree with the OPC if they don't want to.
Now, just to be clear, the individuals serving in that committee were nominated and elected by the commissioners there. And Daryl, was it this committee that had like 10 nominees right out of the gate?
Yeah.
Yep. Boom, boom, boom. Which was an awkward situation because our clicker only has 10 options. So if there was an 11th candidate, we would have had to gone to paper ballots. Which
so here, this is kind of crass. But actually, I won't use the crime that I mentioned. But if you were going to do a committee on preventing theft, would you have an active thief that hadn't been caught yet? I mean, would you bring him on the committee? I mean, maybe a reformed thief, but you wouldn't have.
I mean, this is literally the plot to the end of Catch Me If You Can with Tom Hanks and Leo DiCaprio. Is he gets him out of prison to help him catch the guys fudging checks.
So maybe the OPC blew it on this one. I don't know. But
Chris's point though is also worth emphasizing that these were people nominated and voted, and the top two vote getters, if there's any indication, were Dave Van Drunen and Alan Strange, who have decided views about this. Yeah, I mean,
they have studied it already.
This assembly, right? But the mood of this assembly was one that was willing to entrust this committee to those two guys, among others. I personally would have. I think I did vote also for a little bit more diversity, not because I think this committee is supposed to advocate a position. I think we're supposed to report and be, dare I say, neutral. But try to present all the sides. And, I think we probably have to come down, especially on the side of the revisions to the Westminster Confession of 1787-88 in relation to the original. But these are still, it's an advisory committee. It's not going to lay down the law of the OPC about this. And it'll be curious to see how many minds it actually changes as well.
Right. People can still go to certain conferences and buy all sorts of historical books that have all sorts of perspectives. They're still out there. Yeah. The U.S. Postal Service still delivers books, and you can still pay for them over the internet.
Amazing times we're living in. Just amazing.
I remember when I, first heard about Amazon and how much money they were losing. This is, 10, 15 years ago. I said, it'll never work. What a failure. This is going to, so it shows what I know.
Multi-trillion-dollar company now.
Yeah. So, so we get the study committee. So that's two different study committees formed. One on kinism, and I think you all might have coined a new word, ethno-racism. And then the one.
Yeah, there was an attempt. There was a brief attempt to try to combine the work of those two special committees, but that failed.
Yeah, it's probably best not to, because there's overlap, but they're not the same thing. And I'm sure Daryl, that you guys will look at the PCA partial report, which I think is pretty good. I haven't had time to read every word of it, but but I think it probably was helpful, and it was it was consensus. It was a unanimous sort of document, and there was some diversity on that committee. So I think people don't realize when you're on a committee like that, denomination wide, it's kind of a big deal. People start bending over backwards to be fair, and they know that everybody's going to be shooting at them. So you try to keep everything above board and up to standard. So people could you kind of know who's going to like it and who's not going to like it even before it's done sometimes. Although what was it, the committee on the study on republication. I think they're I don't know what their goal was, but the report was that nobody liked it. So that means it was either good or could have been something else. I don't know, but not for me to judge. So what were the other overtures, and what was their disposition?
There were two more. There was one from the Presbytery of the South requesting that the General Assembly direct our Christian Education Committee to redistribute the contents of a General Assembly report that was produced in 1974, a report of the Committee on the Problems of Race, as well as actions taken by the 41st General Assembly relative to that report. That overture was not granted. I think the feeling was that because of the work of these two new committees, and given the context in which that original report was written, that it would be wise just to go with the two new committees and not grant that overture. That's my feeling. Daryl may have a different view on it. The one I know Daryl does probably have a view on is the last overture, which came out of my presbytery. It was a request that the General Assembly cease publication of ordained servant no later than December 31st of this year, and to require any future publication for church officers be approved by a vote of the General Assembly. And that overture was not granted, and there was no audible affirmation on the floor of the Assembly.
You know,
so the reason for that
in the PCA, similar things have been done. I think there was something sort of a defund our By Faith magazine, which is now not a male magazine. They've made, MAIL, printed, I should say. I think they've gotten more efficient. I think it's improved in the last couple of years and more relevant to the full spectrum of the PCA. But yeah, I'm sure Daryl can tell us in history, publications have often been a flash point in denominations, but usually nothing changes much.
Well, there was a controversial article published that also named another minister in good standing in the church. And we as the Christian Ed Committee, and I serve on the subcommittee on serial publications and work with the editors of both Ordained Servant and New Horizons. And we had to go into overdrive to correct this because we saw it to be an error right away. And lots of explanations for this, and you could point the finger at someone, but it was mainly an oversight in editorial vision, and there was no ill will. We took the article down immediately. The editor he made a mistake and didn't see the difficulty of this, and we've been revising the editorial oversight of the magazine or the journal since then. But as I understand it, and Chris is closer to the situation in the presbytery, there's a particular minister in session, as I understand it, that was looking to. I mean, they had many grievances against the journal, but in our explanations as committee members, both to the advisory committee and to the General Assembly, it seemed to be very satisfactory what we were trying to do. And I think we were above board in admitting mistakes, and also above board about trying to change the way we edit the magazine. And just a level of personal, the way this affected me personally was because I was one of the representatives for the Christian Ed Committee. It meant that I was not assigned to one of the advisory committees. And so I had one of the easiest General Assemblies of recent memory for me. I had to meet with the advisory committee when they were considering this overture, and we were there for maybe an hour and a half. And then on the Monday, when we General Assembly considered this overture, I had to go up on the podium with Danny Ollinger and our president of the committee, Craig Troxell. But I was spared any advisory committee work, for which I was very grateful. And I maybe I shouldn't say that publicly, but it did make General Assembly more pleasant.
Well, I'm just relieved to know that it wasn't the fact that they published a book review article by me in the last year, that wasn't the cause of all the
no, that wasn't
of the problem. Oh, good. I'm glad to know that. So, yeah. All right. So you're going to keep your magazine. And so that's your 4 overtures, more or less.
Yep.
Yes.
And now, so listeners, many of ours know, but not everyone, when you all have a discipline case, you do not have a standing judicial commission like the PCA does, which is elected, sworn, all that stuff. But they hear the appeals at the highest level, and they act as a commission. They act for the General Assembly. So it still says in our book, I wrote I don't know. I think I've had a couple of overtures that were successful, but one amendment that I wrote, and it was to make it easier for accused persons to have representation from a wider pool of people, not just their local church, and then not just teaching elders at Presbytery. But there was, but in the language in the book, it talks about who can represent you before the General Assembly. And what that means is the SJC, because it's a commission that acts for the General Assembly. But in your case, in the OPC, you're how many people you have? 150, 200?
150, isn't it, Daryl?
Yeah.
Basically the size of our overtures committee. But you all hear those cases as the whole court, right? So that's one of the reasons that you have a longer assembly, because you all are a court of the whole. And of course, if you only had 2 cases, that's not too bad, but it could run into some real time and work. So,
well, one of those
tell us
cases
about that.
had 26 specifications of error that we had to debate every one. And and the person bringing this, I won't name him, good guy. I knew him back at Westminster in Philadelphia. I think he was maybe a student when I was teaching there. But if he was, and I don't think he was trying to do this, but if he wanted to get revenge, this was a way to do it. We slogged through that almost all day Saturday.
I was going to say that was almost all of Saturday's business.
And I don't think we fit. Well, we finally finished with them all, but we still then had to decide whether the number of specifications of error that we affirmed or approved qualified to then overturn or modify the verdict in the presbytery. And that led to more debate on Monday. And I mean, when you were saying, Brad, about your SJC compared to our court of the whole, I've been at maybe 12 of the last 13 General Assemblies, and I've served on the advisory committees that where we go through some of these cases, and also sat on the floor and heard the debates. And I do wonder if virtue in a committee, a judicial committee. I know the OPC, that's part of in our DNA, that's what the PCUSA did, and that's how Machen got screwed, etc. So we don't ever want to do that. But it does feel to me, and maybe this happens also at the Standing Judicial Commission, that we're like 30,000 feet removed from what's actually happening, whether in the congregation or the presbytery. And I don't know if SJC can do any better with that, but it always feels to me like we're missing something else that's going on here.
Well, let me say, the PCA has 24 members on their SJC, and they split up into panels on different cases. So it's actually a smaller number of people sort of doing a lot of the research and making a recommendation, but still it's the whole SJC that votes. So 24 people is what we have. That's just,
yeah.
For
the other part of that too is I wonder if we could have a pastoral committee of some kind that would hear the complaints that each side has against the other before actually lawyering up and going to ecclesiastical court. Whether it's a marriage that percolates up through the courts and appeals to the General Assembly, or if it's ministers that have problems with their session or ministers that have problems with their presbytery, would there be a way of trying to hear these concerns without actually going to trial? But as far as I know, we don't have that mechanism other than the informal mechanisms that we have as officers trying to love each other and serve the church and serve each other. But
I do have one thing about that particular appeal. One of the reasons it was as lengthy as it was, and one of the reasons there were so many specifications of error, is that, in my opinion, the basic functioning of the trial had some pretty big deficiencies. I think the members of the court in question would admit to that. And it was one of those situations where I wish men in the church with some experience with this would have been available for them to be used as good resources to make sure things were structured in a way that would make the decision making on some of those issues by the time it gets to the General Assembly more straightforward. I mean, we had another judicial appeal that actually came out of our presbytery. It had 4 specifications of error, and the first 3 were pretty readily sustained. Were not sustained. The 4th specification of error was regarding degree of censure, and that specification error was sustained, and the censure was changed. But the substance of the case and the finding of guilt was, by comparison, I think a little more easy for the assembly to judge, just because the case itself, in my view, was structured a little more clearly than the other one.
Yeah, let me throw in a couple of explanatory notes. Chris is talking about specifications. When you charge someone in the PCA or the OPC, and I assume most other denominations, it's going to be something specific. You have to show where they've been in error or done something that's a violation of God's law or of the standards of the church. It's a daunting thing to file charges against someone. And it's supposed to be hard because most things can be resolved, like Daryl said, with a form of mediation. Most PCA presbyteries have a pastoral care committee, and that's kind of the first. Of course, the presbytery is made up of all the pastors, teaching elders, what we would call them, and then delegates, ruling elder delegates. So sometimes I sort of being critical, I call Presbytery Pastors Club, because in some areas, not a lot of ruling elders participate, and you get the idea that the pastors kind of circle the wagons around each other. It's not always, that happens sometimes, but it's not pervasive. But a pastoral care committee is meant to, in the presbytery, which is mostly teaching elders, and they're almost always the leaders, whether they should be or not, of the presbytery. The pastoral care committee tries to help and resolve problems with ministers, marriages, doctrine, relations to the church, like you all said. But now also sometimes problems between churches in the presbytery, like churches that don't show up, churches that don't submit minutes, things like that. And so there really aren't that many trials, but in the Presbyterian system, there's a mechanism for it. The accused has rights, the wronged have rights, and it all kind of, people say, "Oh, this is a mess." Well, of course it is. It would have to be. But yeah, specifications. I have to say what you did, and also I really have to say when you did it too. Mm-hmm. I can't just say you once taught that humans were a product of evolution and natural selection. You have to say in a sermon on March the 23rd of 2019, this is what was said. So that raises the bar. We can't just go against people that we generally disagree with or don't like. And it's a serious and solemn business. And I don't know about you all, but when there's an indictment or when there's a trial, there are these things we have to say. There's passages of Scripture we have to read that are supposed to impress the prosecutors and the accused and the judges of the gravity of the whole thing. And it is a big deal. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there were also 10 complaints. Now, a complaint is different from an appeal of a judicial decision. A judicial decision is rendered in cases of sin and those sorts of things. A complaint is usually raised if somebody alleges that a particular group made a bad decision. So a session decides to do something. Somebody says, no, that's not in keeping with the book. We need to have a remedy for this. What is it? You present that to the court. They accept or reject it. If they reject it, then you can appeal those up to the General Assembly. We had 10 of those this year. 5 of them, if I recall, were actually withdrawn. 7 of the 10 actually came from one church, from activities related to one church. 5 of those 7 were withdrawn, and there were 2 left, and then a few other complaints as well. So just the volume of some of those complaints, and actually some of the complexity of the matters related in that from that one church that gave rise to those complaints were kind of tricky as well.
The hardest case. I've seen situations where there are so many things wrong that you don't know where to start, and those are really hard to handle. I'm not saying the church in this case was even in the wrong, because I don't know anything about it. But sometimes these questions are just so layered and multi-sided that until you've been been involved in one from any of the aspects, it's very difficult. So when we revised the chapter on representation a couple of years ago, one of the things that was added was a statement that said the session or the presbytery, whatever, when someone's been accused of something, they need to help them find representation and help them in the process. Because if not, it's just like going into, federal court without a lawyer. It can be that way. Most people are not going to take advantage of it, but I've seen enough of Presbyterian books of church order that I could tell that an accused person could easily be put at disadvantage just by nature of the complexity of the process, deadlines, forums, all those things. So we want to avoid that because it's the right thing to do. So it's always a place we can get better. Every Presbyterian church can improve and should be constantly, I think, improving and evaluating the way they deal with people. But that's hard too. All right, so what else we got, Chris?
Well, we had a couple of big things. One is we had a visitor from Great Commissions Publications. This came up during the Christian Education Committee report. Of course, that's a joint publishing venture between our denomination and yours, Brad, the PCA. It celebrated 50 years this past year, and so that was a nice event to commemorate at this assembly. We also had a couple of, we have one man in particular was honored this year, Dr. James Gidley, who served on the Committee of Christian Education for 36 years for our denomination, including having been the president of the committee for 17 years. He received a wonderful resolution of thanks for his long term of service on that committee.
I would add, fitting that it happened here because he taught engineering at Geneva College for his career as well, so we could do it on his home turf.
That was a really lovely and touching moment. I was very gratified to have been able to witness that. Jim did a wonderful job on that committee. Excuse me. In addition to the advisory, the ecumenical delegates addresses, which were wonderful, most of the bulk of the effort was devoted to getting the guys together for the big annual picture, which our social media team did a very good job doing sort of a time-lapse version of that, where the guys are starting to get up and move around and shuffle around. It was kind of fun.
As a former photographer, I can tell you taking large group pictures is absolutely the worst and most impossible thing ever.
and I have to give props. The person who's helping manage our social media and has really helped us up the game on that is her name is Rachel Kinney, and she was doing that photograph of the group and helping with a small group of other folks put together some of the video shorts and social media posts that people would have seen during the week of the assembly. So she's done a really good job with that and kind of advancing us out of the hinterlands of the internet into more contemporary forms of communication.
You guys are punching above your weight, to use an PCA term.
Well, the other thing that should be noted is we have, during the course of the assembly, there are 4 times of devotion. We actually have a standing order of the day at 11:40, 20 minutes ahead of the lunch hour, where a man is invited to give a short, I don't know what you would call it, homily or sermonette on a particular text. And I think those were all really well received this year. It was good just to hear the work of the committee. One of the refrains, and I need to bring this up, one of the refrains we heard time and time again from the committees of the church, from our ecumenical partners, and from others is a really increasing urgency to find men to serve in the ministry.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Huge problem right now. It's not just exclusive to our denomination. It's affecting most of the Reformed denominations around the world, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed. With our Committee on Foreign Missions, we've had some progress in identifying men to go into the field, but we still have great need, and right now we have no applicants for any of those positions.
So there's a ministerial shortage, and yes. I think the PCA's got more margin just because we've got twice as many teaching elders, I think, as we have churches, maybe more than twice as many. But they're not all fit to be, we probably have some people ordained or doing jobs that wouldn't require ordination. But we've got more bench, I guess you might say. I think it is tougher for the other smaller denominations as the cost of living and doing business and everything goes up. It's just harder. Your dollar doesn't go as far in supporting a minister or planting churches as it used to. So, Daryl, I was going to ask you about that, but also, you're an historian. You probably held the historian of the OPC Church for a while. At some time there in the last 3 decades, you're not the historian now. But what's the state and health of the OPC? The denomination of Machen, 90 years down the line, 90 years since 1936.
Well, before I try to answer that, just go back to this point, and this occurred to me as we were talking to the advisory committee, representatives from Christian Ed to the advisory committee, partly because we have programs like the Timothy Institute, I think it's called, where we recruit high schoolers and college students to consider the ministry. And oftentimes we have between 15 and 25, 30 students a year that attend that. We have another program called the Shiloh Institute where we have seminarians attend who are maybe thinking about the ministry in the OPC and try to encourage them. Usually we have maybe 6 to 8 students go to that. So these questions came up to Christian Ed, and I had a thought there that I hadn't ever had before, which is do we try to recruit second career ministers? I mean, the model seems to be high school, college, seminary, and then get a call. But what about somebody who's already had a career, but they want to become a minister? And are we making any kind of effort to try to recruit those kinds of people?
We have a fair number of those in the PCA. They're not uncommon. Yeah, they're not uncommon at all,
including Fred Greco.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a program for it. I think the PCA just for some reason is open to it.
Right.
But anyway.
I mean, I'm going to recommend that Christian Ed gives some attention to this, and it's hard to regularize any of that because at least high school, college, seminary, you kind of know the years involved, et cetera. It's a kind of progression. It's hard to find, okay, you've been in this line of work for 15 years now, well, where's your pension, your retirement funds? It could get very entangled. But where is the OPC? Back to your question. I'm not sure. I mean, I'll give you one way of trying to answer it, but this was encouraging in a maybe strange way. The first, I don't know what Chris's perceptions of this were, but it was a very quiet assembly all day Friday and Thursday when we came back together. We went through the committee reports, standing committees, and there were just no questions and answers. It seemed like people, maybe they wanted to get to the complaints and the judicial cases, but no one was speaking up. And usually there are kind of people there who have maybe an axe to grind and are showing, the sharpness of that wedge already before you get to some of the other stuff. But there didn't seem to be any of that going on those days. But even when we did get to the judicial cases, I was surprised that there was a very low level of snark. There was generally a good element of trust. And, maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but I think it's probably acknowledged that there are presbyteries in the OPC, I'm sure also in the PCA, that have certain reputations for being a certain way. And the guys from those presbyteries this year were very well behaved. And even, I thought, taking positions that showed them capable of being leaders in the church. Because when I started out as an elder and going to some general assemblies, there were like 5 or 6 men in the church, even though we don't have a celebrity system. But if they stood up and they made a speech one way on a particular issue, you took that into account. And that could sway your vote. And I've been thinking of late that we're losing those men, and it's not clear who those men are going to be. There are some that I would identify who fit that position. But I guess I was encouraged to think that maybe many more could step up and assume those roles than I had previously thought. But as far as the sort of carrying on the Machen vision or whatnot, it wasn't a good year necessarily to assess that. It didn't come up. We didn't get into the historical moments, and that's about all I can say at this point.
I understand what you're saying about the. Well, we have the same thing in the PCA, just at a different scale. I looked at the numbers a few years ago. Of course, those who attended the first OPC General Assembly, I think if you do the math, you could get them in 2 large buses. I mean, that was about they would fit if a few people stood up. And if you look at the attendance of the first General Assembly of the PCA and of the OPC, their growth, trends have not been that different. Of course, remember the PCA, absorbed a whole denomination, which was more than 100,000 people in the RPCES. So that was kind of like a cheat code, So, we can say, well, we're 10 times larger than the OPC. Well, the PCA was about 10 times larger at its start than the OPC was. So neither one have just set the world on fire according to worldly standards, but both have hung around and grown over time. Of course, the OPC started at such a disadvantage, and then really, Daryl, you could speak to this. there was a culture war in the first year, and there were those, and I think this kind of continued up into the 40s or 50s. There were those who kind of wanted to be a culture player, political, nation changer, city redeemer type crowd. There were some of those always in the OPC, and they weren't always happy.
Right. Yeah, and the OPC started roughly a decade before the new evangelicalism started, the National Association of Evangelicals, which and Billy Graham's celebrity comes a little later than that, and then Christianity Today. Fuller Seminary is part of the mix, and that was looked like the wave of the future for evangelicalism. And the OPC didn't join the NAE, but had a lot of ties to leaders of the evangelical movement. And I still don't. I mean, I didn't really pay attention enough to hear the word evangelical at the General Assembly, and it would be curious to know how many of the commissioners would identify themselves as evangelical or reformed if they had to make the choice. I think most would choose reformed, but how many would be reluctant to make that choice, I don't know. And I still think that's a big tension for Reformed churches now, is whether they're going to be part of a broader evangelical movement. But I mean, I've also been thinking of late, and I'll just think out loud with you and whoever's listening and hear what the PCA perspective might be. But it does seem, with the online presence and the influencers that are out there, whether they're Christian nationalists or not, that there are so many more outlets for Christian voices, Christian influence, such that our denominations seem to be passé and seem to have very little influence. And I don't know.
That's what Mark Tooley says. Mark Tooley
Right.
at the IRDC or
Right.
whatever that's called.
I mean, there's a certain sense in which that's right, but there's also a major sense in which that's wrong, because within our communions, our denominations obviously make a big difference, and the way we relate to each other in fraternal relations also is important. And the seminaries, the Reformed seminaries and the Westminster seminaries and others, I mean, they're also, they don't merely serve our communions, but they're still serving denominations generally. But I've been thinking for a while about whether denominations are passé. I don't think they are. I mean, I think communions, church government is a big part of being a church. But it's not merely now evangelical versus reformed. It's even denomination, and not merely parachurch, but denomination/social media, in a way that you have to sort of think about your identity or your allegiances, who you follow, who you listen to or not. And I do think denominations have lost some of their presence, at least if you're looking at it online, factoring
I'm
it in.
going to have to say that, I mean, I think that there aren't any NAPARC churches that are numerically significant, but apparently the PCA is very important, because everybody from right and left and up and down has been criticizing the PCA in the past month or so. It's like we're worth fighting over, and so is the OPC. I mean, y'all are catching a lot of strays as well. So the independents, the Baptists, the Anons, and the CREC people, they love to take shots at the rest of NAPARC. Right now, because all these NAPARC denominations have adopted that ARP statement on kinism, this indeterminate number of mostly anonymous people online are losing their minds. But but what effect does that have in the real world? Not
Right.
much, I don't think. But some of these fringe, even a fringe group like the CREC, they clearly care about how they're perceived on social media, and that's where a lot of their base is. That's they're the new media kind of denomination, and they're much louder than they are influential and significant, I think. But yeah, that is a new dynamic in all this. So I don't know the extent to which there weren't many Reform podcasts when we started, and there are 10 times as many now. It's one of the reasons we don't do as many shows. We don't try to cover everything that's happening. And when you get older, you get a little jaded with some of the controversy, some of the characters, and I think in some ways, Resby and I would say we've never cared less about this enterprise. That's not to say that it's not important in a way, but it's always been more about meeting people, having a good time, and talking to people that we like to talk to than trying to be any sort of big thing or big deal. And,
we're the LinkedIn you want to post on.
Yeah. We never expected anyone to care. Although, because we'd been on Twitter for years, we started, day one, we had way more listeners than most first day podcasts had. It was, we've probably tripled in size since then, but we started at a pretty good clip.
Well, I think
And-
that
I mean,
was I think that was due to our 9-month gestational period of having an active Twitter account and 0 episodes.
Yeah.
It's
a soft launch.
I discovered you guys when I was making my way out of the PC USA and being examined by the Presbytery of the Dakotas to be transferred in. And
you may have had the first. Chris may have inspired the first moment of like actual dead air, not related to my old internet provider. When he came on that first call-in show and revealed his awful, wonderful Grinchian idea to go from the PCUSA to the OP.
So Daryl was on about our 5th show, the Presbyterian Love Boat, we called it. What a cruise on this love boat we've had.
Well, we go back. I mean, the funny thing, I think we thought we were being cute. The first episode is called episode 4.
Yeah. An Old Hope. And then the second one was 7. And
the brand awakens.
The first words ever spoken on Presbycast, the first words ever spoken were, "Well, imagine bumper music," because we couldn't figure out how to do it. And who could have imagined what it would have become, what it would become. But then, so Daryl's in there about number 5 as a guest, first guest. And then we got after Redeemer Church Planting in the next episode. And then we had Daryl back on.
There's Harambe as with the episode art.
Yeah. And then we
speaking of 10-year anniversaries.
Oh yeah.
Well, commemorations. There should be a memorial overture at PCAGA.
and we pretty quickly got into a call-in. We did a call-in show really early, only 4 months in.
Yeah, so that would have been Chris. That would have been Chris's first appearance on our show.
Yeah, that would have been that call-in show. Yep.
So anyway, that's.
And then look what comes right after it. Look what comes right after it. Presbycast for the rest of us.
Yep. Yep.
I'm starting to tear up.
Yeah. Tear up or something. Yeah.
No, that's the asbestos coming off your mic cover.
That's right. Foam is just disintegrating into my nose.
So, I don't know. I think some of my favorite shows were the music shows where we did the Southern Baptist musicals and DB Worship Guy and people like that. And, we did a live drama performance of about a Christian bookstore about a year ago. Got no response at all. We didn't care. We enjoyed it. So we've never.
Oh, there's that classic episode with Resby and Drew Mills about the wonderful album that Kanye produced.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Well, what I'm most proud of with that episode is how right we were in retrospect. Christendom was certainly ushered in as a result of that. And, he's maintained multiple successful marriages since that time.
That's a 3-year Letterman line. He was saluting 3-year Letterman, the parody account. He was talking about Pete Hegseth's 3 successful marriages.
It's the Chili's triple dipper.
I mean, sometimes you have to ask yourself, these guys have been married 6, 7 times. I mean, who supports marriage more than they do, really, in one way? I mean, who's more in favor of marriage than someone that keeps getting married again and again? I know the irony there. I'm not commending that, but
do you think the transformation of culture, impulse, discourse has faded? It wasn't present this year at all, the General Assembly. Not that it's present much, but it sometimes comes up in the way that some of the reports, and I don't know where it stands in the PCA, but because of Tim Keller's death and maybe a bit of sidelining of Gospel Coalition, it's not there as much. And it's also maybe people are afraid to engage the culture now because who knows where it's going. I mean, it really is hard to fathom between MAGA and the far left.
I think people's goals and aspirations have gotten more modest. And I think, quite frankly, 10 years ago, we were trolling some of these missional types pretty hard. We used to do that. And we were on the Gospel Coalition because it seemed to be everything back then because they weren't ecclesial. And it was pretty obvious that they were good with soteriology, but they weren't doing a lot for ecclesiology. But I think the shine's off of it, and I think people are not as. I think that's good that they've become more realistic, and there's fewer of those buzzwords flying around. But that's just
I wonder. I mean, you think about the Gospel Coalition, let's say, founded 2007. So it starts right about the time Obama really starts taking shape and probably peaks, let's say, in that Obama second term. And then probably
2011, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. And then kind of starts to wane out, certainly by COVID, I feel like things were kind of, it was almost like the further away we get from the Obama presidency, and that's more of just like a time frame benchmark than any deeper commentary than that. And now I'm going to segue into something that seems like I'm directly correlating to it, is you can now kind of look at the Gospel Coalition. It's almost like the Obama presidential library. It's just this monolith. It exists. There's words printed all over it, and nobody's reading anymore.
Well, those words are pretty hard to read on that library. They ran them all together.
But I mean, you can't, for all that we've tried to make people laugh, nobody has been a better sketch comedy outfit than some of the stuff the Gospel Coalition earnestly put out. I mean, you had, James McDonald and who else, chirping
Driscoll.
D.A. Carson for
Mark
only having
Driscoll,
one
yeah.
church service. You've got the phenomenal Elephant Room, 1 and 2, Electric Boogaloo. I mean, there was just, there was a time to speak at the hotel where Martin Luther King was assassinated at one point. They hosted that. Russell Moore was there. I mean, just you can't look at the history of Presbycast without somewhat intertwining it back to those just incredible moments that if you asked AI to come up with a parody of it, I don't think it could do a better job.
Well, now, Presbycast had a lot less attrition than the Gospel Coalition when you think about it.
It's 100% of the hosts are still here.
Same council, same board.
I think we lost one producer to a cereal bar.
Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, we haven't ever, I don't think we've ever taken ourselves very seriously, and some people don't get that. But that's just the way it's been. And Daryl doesn't take himself too seriously, and a lot of people don't understand that online. And a lot of times people say, what does Daryl mean? I said, well, I understand what he means. A few times I don't understand, but almost never. I think I understand you. But I've decided it's not my job to defend Daryl Hart online. He can it's like, what was it? Let Reagan be Reagan. I say let Daryl be Daryl. And he's just a cuddly, lovable man. And so say we all.
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to something the other day that somebody was saying something like, what defines you as a person is what you were reading when you were 17. And it made me think, I was reading a lot of Kurt Vonnegut back when I was 17 and 18. And there's probably some grain of truth in there that a lot of other things fit with his kind of absurdist take on the world.
I think I was reading It. Stephen King.
I mean, explains a lot.
Well, that's another that's another show.
That could be be a problem.
Yeah.
Hey, I do have a couple. One more thing. This is a big deal for some people who would listen about the OP. There was actually a motion at one time to stop debate. It was made, it was seconded, and it would pass almost unanimously. That's one.
The question was called. Okay.
The question was called.
And no, the ceiling didn't fall in. The basketball, the rim, the backboard didn't collapse.
It did. Yep. And the one other thing Daryl mentioned.
It helped that the mover of that previous question was also a former moderator. Anyway.
Yes. Now, there's another beautiful moment that happened too. Daryl alluded to some of the gentlemen who've been prominent presences at General Assemblies for a number of years, and that there's a rotation that's sort of happening that's generational. But there was one man there who made a very good comment. We had one debate as we were racing to try to finish that was getting a little repetitive. And this man stood up, and I'll just say who it was. It was David Winslow. Got up, and the moderator said, Mr. Winslow, and he said, Mr. Moderator, may we vote now, please? Shut the debate down. Nobody would say anything after that, and we moved on without having to have a vote to stop the debate and then vote again on the motion. It was genius. I told him I was going to write that down for future. Can we vote now?
Now, I watched a few minutes of the EPC General Assembly today, and I'm just going to tell you, it made me very happy to be NAPARC or PCA. Mm-hmm. It was not good, and I think years ago I even watched some of the PC USA assembly, and oh my goodness, what a social science grievance.
You're going to want to watch it. You're going to want to watch it again this year.
City council meeting, large urban center city council meeting. That was brutality. But no, I think those of us who are in the various NAPARC denominations are happy to be in them. Big, large, or small, and of course we're all small in relative terms. But again, I think the last thing I just want to say is that ecumenism is a good thing when it's founded on true commonality, and I think NAPARC has that. I think NAPARC is more. I think we may find that some of these extremists in the kind of broader air quotes reformed world is actually bringing NAPARC together a little bit. We've cooperated more than we have since the days of the Federal Vision, and that's good. And again, I think I said this in my fraternal delegate remarks 3 years ago. It's not getting. Our culture is not getting better. We're going to need each other more in the future than we do today, and we need each other today. And we're going to have more financial stress, very possibly. more hostility maybe from federal government, less money to go around, and we're definitely going to need each other, and that's the way it is. We might as well get together and communicate and have commonality before we absolutely have to, because we know in a time of persecution or crisis we would get together. But why not go ahead? Why not start now? So yeah, I appreciate the OPC for that reason above all. I think these days. So, Presby, you're happily you moved like I'm about to move. I'm going to stay in the PCA. You're in a different NAPARC denomination, but you're a happy camper over there too.
Yep, it's good to be in a place with few shenanigans. I was blessed to spend 7 years in a church with at least a church with no shenanigans. Obviously, the Presbytery of the Southeast has had its fair share of shenanigans in the past so many years, but our church was wonderful, and now we're in one with also a few shenanigans. And one of my offspring is taking advantage of some of the mountain facilities provided there. So who could fault that?
Well, you can get your vicarious trauma and shenanigans from the PCA.
I've been doing that for years.
We provide that liberally.
It's like reading survivor stories.
Yeah. So again, let me say, 30 seconds on the assembly next week. I won't be there for the first time since 20. I visited on 17. I've been a commissioner every year from 18 to last year. We had plenty of people to go from my church, and I thought I might be moving next week. Not. It's going to be another month or two. But and I don't really miss not going this year. I don't think. It just seems like maybe a good year not to be there. I think it'll be a good week, and I'll watch it online. I do have to fill in for the company I sold my company to. They need me next week to kind of cover some things, but I'll be before a computer and I can watch it. But I think
it's crazy that you have Elon's number as a result of this.
Yeah, and the fact that I think when you get older, maybe Daryl can attest to this. You don't get so torn up about every little controversy in the church. You kind of take it all. You don't take it as seriously in some ways, and you pace yourself. So it's been an okay time to be distracted from all of it. And there's so many young guys pumping out so much content and apps and charts and reports that it's important to know in a church you're not really that. You're not in a good Presbyterian church, local presbytery or denomination. You're not really essential, no matter who you are. There are no indispensable presbyters, and probably most people don't really care what you think. The plurality of elders is a good thing. So, well, I appreciate you two guys who are just been super important to the show and have helped provide a lot of information and inspiration and consternation to many. And as long as we go on, you'll see Chris and Daryl on here fairly often, I think. So, Resby, any parting thoughts? I mean, I don't want anybody to tear up or anything with this moving milestone, but we're always
I mean, we're
always wondering what you're going to say.
As we enter the second half of our show discussing Kanye West's discography since the Jesus is King album, I just want to preface, moving into the second decade of Presbycast, that out of all the podcasts that I've been able to be there for the beginning, out of all the ones started sitting in a recliner with a cigarette burn in the armrest in a rented single wide, balancing a USB headset into a laptop on a TV dinner stand, this is by far my favorite. Luckily we don't have to go to downloadfromyoutube.com to get our audio anymore. but we want to thank them for all their service for that first year and a half. And so, on behalf of 10 years of Presbycast, please don't be an Erdman.
What's wrong with you people?